threatening or warning another person, everything hinges on their reactions as well. So threats are more powerful, but only if they're perceived to be real. And, there are plenty of people who cry wolf so many times. If you do that again, I'm leaving you. Then it happens again. If you do that one more time, I'm leaving you. And it happens again. And if you do that one more time, I really am leaving you. That whole cry wolf concept is you just begin to think that they're not trustworthy and, the threats aren't real anymore. So the threats and warnings are part of that competition management style, but very unhealthy, very negative. Compromise is a fourth management style. This is a lose-win-win-lose approach. And what I mean by that is that you are both losing and you are both winning. And you'll understand a little further when I go into these. You're finding a middle ground. So you are willing to give in to some of the issues, but you're willing to stand up for some of the issues. So you are equally losing, equally winning. You're finding a solution that meets everyone's needs. The advantages are it often creates a quick resolution. If both parties are willing to compromise and meet in the middle, and that reminds me of, I'm like old school country. I like new country too, but I listened to country before country was cool, and a song from ages and ages ago, the lyric says, I'll start walking your way, you'll start walking mine, we'll meet in the middle beneath that old Georgia pine. And that just popped into my head when I said that. So now you know a little bit more about me as far as my country affinity. But if you think about meeting in the middle, that gives you quick resolution because each of you know what you're willing to do to find common ground. It reinforces equal power. And so that's almost that level playing field that you establish. And you're saving face because everyone wins something. And we talked about saving face, extensively previous in the semester. So, that can be very helpful when you're helping the other person save face, you're saving face for yourself, and everyone is coming out in a positive place. Compromise is actually a very popular conflict management style because it's easy. It doesn't really require a whole lot other than a willingness to lose a little to win a little. But beware of one-sided compromise because sometimes people are not losing equally. In other words, you're both losing, but one person is losing significantly more than the other. And so keep in mind that a one-sided compromise is not a compromise. And finally, collaboration management style. This is a high concern for both yourself and others. And it treats conflict as a set of problems to be solved. And we talked about that when we were discussing ego management resolution. Can we look at this as a set of problems to be solved? This is the only win-win approach. It requires more effort. It requires more self-development. It requires more self-awareness. So this is not really necessarily a common conflict management style, but it is the only win-win approach. You separate people from the problem. So again, staying focused on the task at hand, the issue that needs to be addressed. Focus on your shared interest. What do you have in common? What commonalities or truths can you agree on? And it generates a lot of solution options. That to me is probably one of the best reasons to try for collaboration, because if you think about it, if you only can think of one solution, Maslow, which I know some of you are not psychology or social work people, so Abraham Maslow created a hierarchy of needs, and he's a psychological father, if you will. And one of his famous quotes is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything begins to look like a nail. So if you only have one solution option, you're pretty stuck. You're a prisoner of one choice. So if you can collaborate, you often will generate a lot of solution options, which gives you much, much more in the way of coming to an agreement where you can both win. And you base your decisions on objective criteria. If you're collaborating, you're not focusing on personal issues. It's objectivity, it's rational, it's logical, it's, okay, this is what we are looking for, this is what our goals are, let's meet those needs based on those things. The advantage is that it enhances commitment because everyone is involved in the decision. You cannot collaborate without everyone contributing. So if, there's almost that buy-in factor, where another thing that I teach my kids is, not my personal children, the kids that I work with, that when you choose something, you are responsible for the consequence of that choice, but you are also more likely to agree with the choice because you made it in the first place. If you provide children with, okay, you can choose to wear this red shirt or this blue shirt to school, where in the past they may have fought you tooth and nail about getting dressed in the morning. If you say you can choose to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt today, which do you choose? If they choose the red shirt, what is the likelihood they're going to fight you about wearing it? They've already made the choice. They're accepting the consequence. They've bought in. They were part of the process. So collaborative management style is really effective because everyone is involved in the decision and your commitment is already there. The disadvantage is it's time consuming. I would say that's probably the major negative, is it does take a lot longer. It requires a lot more of you. But as you can see, the benefits are large as well. Okay, so what would I do in a conflict? I would like you to complete the exercise on page 318 and share what your conflict style is and identify a conflict in which you used your style and what was the outcome. Was it what you wanted, or how could it have been different? So in addition to choosing one of the questions at the beginning of the PowerPoint to answer, you're also going to complete the exercise on page 318, and you have your conflict style assessment. So then you identify a conflict in which you used your style and what was the outcome. Was it how you wanted, or how could it have been different? Okay. So negotiation strategies. When we're talking about, we've looked at conflict management styles, but then we haven't really considered negotiation. And negotiation is kind of a crucial part of conflict, to be honest. So negotiation is a communication process. Again, we're looking at a process in which individuals or groups exchange proposals and interact with each other to create understanding and agreement or to achieve a goal. So I know that's a lot of stuff. I'll hit the highlights. It's a process, that's important. Does not have to be a dyad, it can be even in a group. You're exchanging a proposal, meaning this is what I think should happen. You're interacting with the goal of understanding and agreement. Now, negotiation can be win-win or win-lose. So a win-lose negotiation strategy is very similar to the competition conflict style, wherein you're typically not other-oriented. And if you think of the tough bargainers, that type of person, those are the win-lose negotiators. Kind of like you take it or leave it, or this is the offer and you have to accept it right now, or the offer ends and you're out of luck. That high pressure, tough bargainer, this is the way it is and you need to make a decision right now. When I was a kid, if it was a Friday afternoon and my friend would say, hey, do you want to spend the night tonight? My mom would pick me up in the car circle and I'd run out and say, okay, can I go spend the night? But you need to tell me right now because her mom's 3 cars ahead of you and I have to go with her if we're going to go. That panicked really fast. I want you to say yes, so I'm pressuring you to say yes right now. My mom's response was, if I have to give you an answer right now, the answer is no. And that was consistently her response. And at the time, it was as frustrating as can be. But I have since learned that the idea behind that was, if, I'd like to talk to your dad about it. I'd like to think about it. I'd like to have a moment to even process what my feelings are. And so if I have to tell you right now, the answer is no. And that has actually been very helpful because there have been times when I've been in a really high pressure deal. You go to get an estimate from someone and they say, well, you can get 30% off, but it's today only. And if you don't pay today and sign up today and blah, blah, blah. And I have often, kind of reverted back to that and said, if I have to give you an answer right now, the answer is no. And I have always believed that you need a night to think about it. And like for me personally, I pray about it. And so it's important for me to have time to think over something before I just make a rash decision. The win-lose negotiation strategy is often loud rather than calm. So it can be kind of manic, very loud, very aggressive, very pushy. And it uses things of value to the other person to their advantage. In other words, you're using what the other person wants to motivate them to give in. So it can be a little bit manipulative, it can be a little bit underhanded, and you're basically taking advantage of the other person's needs or things that are important to them. And continued, there are other alternatives that you can keep in mind before starting the negotiation. So there's a way to reach the goal without negotiating. That is always an option. And that can be difficult, especially with someone who wants to negotiate, but there are other alternatives you can keep in mind. You can sometimes bluff and mislead the opponent, which is certainly not my strong suit, what I think is written all over my face at all times. So I am never going to be a poker player, and I'm never going to be someone that can bluff, but there are people that can do that effectively, especially with someone who is that tough negotiator type. Now, the downside is it can backfire if the opponent calls your bluff. So you have to be careful because that's a danger that you face. But you can also prolong negotiations in hopes of winning. And sometimes they'll even say, no, I want an agreement. I want to get this resolved. I want to get it figured out. But then the negotiation goes further and further and further. And all along there's that backstory of, well, the longer this goes, the more I might weaken them and the more their resolve might decrease. And so I might have more of an advantage, et cetera, et cetera. So prolonging negotiations can also be a manipulative component as well. Okay, so then if we look at the win-win negotiation strategies, in this one, you identify specific, clear, and reasonably high goals for the situation. So again, we've talked about specificity and being concise and clear, and then reasonably high goals, meaning you're not going to settle. I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to achieve it. You make friends, you define goals, you keep your eyes on the prize, and you shrug off insults. Those are the ways that you can achieve that. You identify your goals, you set them high, and you work toward it. Win-win negotiators are reluctant to lower their goals. So those people that are driven and committed, and I have set this goal for myself, and I'm going to stand firm while I get it. And so the idea of lowering their goals or lowering their standards is quite difficult. A win-win negotiator knows and discusses priorities. And so because of that, they will sometimes make trade-offs on issues of less importance. Remember early on in the lecture, we talked about, the level of importance to someone. It's not necessarily a misunderstanding. It's what is more important to whom. So make trade-offs on issues of less importance. If you don't want to lower your goals, you don't want to lower your standards, and you are going to stick to your guns and say, this is what I'm going to do no matter what, you may have to look at your priorities and say, okay, I'm willing to trade off because this is less important to me because my more important goal is whatever this was. So then further, win-win negotiators are good problem solvers. That is a crucial personality trait. They know when to hold firm of what is important. So they're not easily swayed. They express passion when an issue or idea is important to them. And that type of person when you meet them. You just see it in them. They exude excitement and passion and commitment to what they want to do. And that means that they're often usually willing to help others get there. They're willing to encourage others to get there. And again, it's a win-win. You win, I win, we all win. They often express genuine interest in the opponent's needs, interests, and goals without phony support or fake flattery. And there are plenty of people who will give you phony support and fake flattery, and they're not win-win negotiators. So the idea there is genuine interest. They truly are interested in your needs and your interests and your goals. Because ideally, the more successful you are,